Madam City Clerk, would you kindly read the rules on how the public may participate this afternoon?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's meeting is broadcast live on our cable government channels as well as on fullerton.legistar.com. The public can view the meetings there, and if they would like to address City Council, they can do so here in person in the chambers, or they can do virtually over Zoom. They can join online or by telephone. The telephone number is 1-669-900-9128, or go to zoom.us/join. And in both cases, you'll put in meeting ID 978-4219-1797, and all that information and more is on the agenda on our website.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Mayor Jung.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Here.
Council Member Dunlap.
Here.
Speaking slowly so you can get to your mic. And Council Member Silva.
Here.
And Council Member Zara is not in chambers at the moment.
We will now hear public comment on closed session items. Those who have registered to speak or raise their hand in Zoom. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the first speaker?
Yeah, we have no one in chambers, but we do have speakers in Zoom. Jane Reifer, you should be okay to unmute.
Great, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. I'd like to speak about the Fox Block item on your agenda. I have some comments and actually a few questions because I would love to understand a little bit about how it's structured, and I hope that the Council also has this information as you're making your deliberations. The first item is the Surplus Land Act. My understanding is that one of the two parcels in the triangular-shaped property north of Ellis, at least one of them was designated as surplus land through the Surplus Land Act. I'm not actually talking about the surplus land through redevelopment. I'm talking just about the Surplus Land Act that allows and prescribes that surplus city property be used for either open space or affordable housing. So I'd actually love to hear what the status of that is before you go into chambers. Or into deliberations. And then also, I'd like to ask about the what's pictured here on the map as a drainage channel. And I want to point out that that's obviously Brea Creek that people in Fullerton for centuries have called the Barranca. And interestingly, that creek, the Barranca, appears on maps as far back as the 1700s when, other features in town don't appear, but this one does. It's really an historic and amazing piece of our natural local heritage. And I would love to see, for instance, if there's going to be courtyard dining or if there's going to be something like that, that it face the creek and that the creek serve as, the beautiful scenic resource that it's supposed to be. I had brought this up at previous meetings, especially when the ENA happened and so forth, asking if this could be looked at. And I see from the map here that there's just like a tall building next to it, not taking advantage of this wonderful resource. So I hope that can be part of your deliberations. And then just lastly, I know there's going to be some change in the pedestrian circulation, and I'm hoping that the Active Transportation Commission committee will have some say in some good design so that pedestrians have more access rather than less. Thank you very kindly.
Mr. City Attorney or Mr. City Manager, would you like to address Ms. Reifer's questions?
Well, this matter is being handled by the firm of Rutan Tucker, so I don't have any direct information, but it is subject to an ENA. We would have to resolve any issue with respect to the Surplus Land Act before any development could be approved for that project. But we would have to check with Rutan Tucker.
Well, and to add to that, it was part of the redevelopment, and so it had a previous redevelopment agreement. So as far as the first issue brought up, it's part of the redevelopment agreement, and there are some exceptions for that in the Surplus Lands Act.
All right, very well. Seeing no other comments in Zoom, we will go ahead and recess to closed session. Thank you.
I will also note for the record that Council Member Zara has arrived to chambers.
I call the October 18th, 2022 meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, would you be kind enough as to tell the public how they can participate, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's meeting is obviously here in person in the chambers, but people can also watch it live on fullerton.legistar.com or on our government cable channels. The public can address City Council here in person, or they can do so by joining the Zoom meeting, which is at zoom.us/join. Or you can call 1-669-900-9128. The meeting ID is 978-4219-1797, and all information is on the agenda. And I'll also note that if anyone in the chambers would like to make public comments tonight, please register right next door in the city manager's office, and we will call you to the microphone when it's your time to speak on either public comment or any of the agenda items.
Very well. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Jung.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Here.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
And Councilmember Zara.
Here.
I want to welcome Aaron Hamilton from Epic Church to give this evening's invocation. Please, welcome.
Good evening. If you'll bow your heads, we'll pray briefly. God, thank you for this city, for the people here, for the people working so hard to keep this a wonderful place. We ask that you would be here, that these meetings would be attended by justice and compassion and your wisdom, so that everybody can enjoy the gifts you've given us in Fullerton. Amen.
And sir, if you don't mind giving a little message to our public on what the good happenings at Epic Church, I'd be certainly grateful, sir.
Sure. We just finished co-sponsoring a queer resilience meeting for local folks. We are partnering with Soulful Fullerton for an after-school program coming up here soon, and continue to help out where we can around the city with the pantry and such. So
Blessed to
glad
have
be
you.
here.
Thank you very much for your service. If I can call on Councilmember Dunlap to give the Pledge of Allegiance.
Great. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any closed session report this
One item
evening?
report out of closed session, in the case of Destich versus the City of Fullerton, on a vote by motion by Mr. Jung and second by Mr. Dunlap, the council unanimously agreed to settle that matter in the amount of $1,995,000.
And we'll discuss ex parte communications. Any council members have ex parte communications to report? I'll look to my left.
Yes, I met with Dan Lancaster of the Fullerton Fire Association.
Very well. I'll look to my right.
Same.
And I had a conversation with Captain Lancaster as well. Anybody else? Very good. We'll move forward this evening to a presentation on the gun buyback program. We are honored to have County Supervisor Chair Doug Chafee this evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be back here. I've given each of you a flyer that talks about the gun buyback. And it's an anonymous gun buyback, no questions asked. And guns can be turned in if it's a handgun, a shotgun, or what we call a ghost gun, and sometimes rifles, if they're operable. We'll give you a $200 card that's either an Amazon card or a gas card. And if you're lucky enough to get an assault rifle, that will be $400 in cards. So essentially, it's gas for your gun. It's intended to be compliance with the Second Amendment. It's purely voluntary. We're buying them, not taking them away under any type of forfeiture arrangement. After the guns are collected, eventually they'll be sent to a smelter where they'll be melted down. There's some specific rules that need to be followed. Would not allow walk-ins. So I'm not going to allow somebody walking in with a gun strapped around their waist. No, it must be in the trunk of a car. It's a drive-through arrangement. We want the gun placed in the trunk, and you drive up and you pop the trunk, an officer will take the gun, inspect it. If you cannot pop the trunk, we ask you to stay in the car, and we'll give the officer a key. We don't want anyone touching weapons while they're passing through here. I'm very pleased that 7 cities, plus the district attorney, are joining my office in this gun buyback program. That's Anaheim, Placentia, Orange, Brea, Buena Park, La Habra, and Fullerton. One of the features is the fact that we need a lot of officers there. It's a very labor-intensive program to be certain it's done correctly and safely. And that means my office will reimburse the cost of the officers from Fullerton that join in. My office also is paying for the gas cards and the Amazon cards, the intent being that you be put to no expense. And I'd like to thank your chief for his help. He has participated in the past, I believe, in Anaheim in a gun buyback, and so I listened to his advice. We've been studying best practices on how to do this now for some time. So I do have some flyers, and then I'll leave with the city. You can print more if you like, or I'll bring more down. I've left a large poster with the clerk. You can do that as you wish, but we're trying to promote as many guns off the street if we can. We find that it's probably, if you've inherited a gun, maybe you don't need it, don't want it. If, in fact, you have extra guns and you want to get rid of one or two and keep one, that's fine. Because among the other things we're doing, we're providing gun locks free to those that have other guns at their house that they'd like to be sure are secured. There are a lot of statistics on getting rid of guns. If you have a burglary, that's going to get stolen if it's able to get there. Children, if they're around, if it's not secured, could be a problem. And so we're trying to just clean things up a little bit if we can. It's totally voluntary. There'll be no ID taken or anything like that. We just want to remove some of the weapons off the street. And so, if I may, I'm having kind of an exciting week here. I have some other flyers I might like to leave with you. We're having a fishing derby, Tri-City Park, on Saturday, the same day that the gun buyback is coming. The gun buyback, I forgot to mention, will be in Placentia. The address is on the flyer. Placentia is heading up the effort, and they will handle the reimbursement. We've given them enough money to do that. We also have Friday in Carbon Canyon Park an outdoor movie, Hocus Pocus, a family movie, and you can come and there's free popcorn as long as it lasts. So it's kind of a lot of fun, and it's going to be a great week, and we look for a great event with the buyback program. So thank all of you for participating. It's my special pleasure to do that.
Thank you,
If there are
sir.
any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any council members with questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for your attendance this evening, and the gun buyback program seems to be a wonderful timed idea, sir.
Well, again, thank you all for your participation.
We'll move on to public comments. We'll now hear public comments on non-agendized items and accept requests to pull consent calendar items as well. Madam City Clerk. who do
I
we
have
this
7
evening?
speakers registered in person for public comments. The first one is Curtis Johnson, and Brian Kay will be our next speaker, followed by Maureen.
Hello, I'm Kurt Johnston. I wanted to bring up a safety issue. Highland Avenue, right around Valencia. It's very dark in there. When you look down the street, you can't even see the street lights. So I think also there's a couple in front of the park there on Highland. There's a couple street lights that are out. And I think part of the problem is the trees are growing over the street lights. And the reason I'm bringing up is because there was an accident there. And I went back the next day, and it looks like the pedestrian didn't survive. So looking down Valencia, it's the same issue. You can't see any street lights. All you see is overgrown jacaranda trees. And so maybe we could take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, next comment, please.
Thank you. He's on his way over there. Maureen, you are our next speaker.
Happy day. I have a little redwood name plaque that I carved your name in. Everybody else up there has one except for Nick Dunlap. Honorable Todd Spitzer has one, so it's overdue. But I really wanted to thank Bruce Whitaker. A few years ago when we met, one of the first things you mentioned, it took about 5 or 10 minutes of our conversation, but you said I was one of the nicest, most pleasant people you had ever met. And we were discussing the fraud committed by Big Pharma in Orange County that led to Kelly Thomas's death. I felt at peace thinking that my issues and my problems were finally at an ease, and actually rushed home and shared with my parents and my family that we're making progress and that these false considerations of my mental health being in peril were addressed. And they weren't. Mayor Fred, part of why I was inspired to come back this week was you mentioned the grand jury and that they occasionally make mistakes, and that when they make a mistake about Fullerton, you have a responsibility to speak up and address those. I have felt like, and I've had the responsibility to present evidence to counter the mental health claims by Fullerton and Anaheim and Orange County through the years, and that's what brings me back. I hope that the petition that I presented last time, and I'll present another one in writing, probably an email, or I'll hand deliver it, but rather than wasting the fire department's resources and the police resources on labeling somebody mentally ill and then sending those services out, provide the service that the person has petitioned for in the first place. And then you don't have that same issue. So this is a very heartfelt petition. Again, I love each and every one of you, and congratulations on your mayoral position. And Nick, sir, I know you're new to this, and you might not know who I am, but congratulations, and thank you for serving. I hope that the city of Fullerton will be able to address these petitions of claiming me as mentally ill and redress those. First Amendment, our very, very First Amendment, the reason why many of us are here, the reason why many people fought and died, the reason why my family has fought and died. And so I'm here, standing here today, petitioning on behalf of not just my family and not just of the other members of the Fullerton community and the Orange County community, but on your behalf, so that Fullerton can address and correct the mistakes that they've made, just like you're asking the grand jury to address and correct the mistakes in the past. There's a lot of beautiful life and a lot of beautiful resources that Fullerton has to offer, but they don't exist if people aren't allowed to address them.
Thank you, sir.
Please, thank you. Happy day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next speaker is Maureen, and after that will be Todd Harrison.
Ms. Milton, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This evening, I would like to ask when there is new projects being presented to the public or in any area in the city, I feel that they should be able, that the entire population of the city can give their opinion on these new projects. Last week, for the project on Ellis, they had a presentation for an hour. There were quite a few of us there, but not as many as could be. I feel that these projects should be up so everyone has the opportunity to give their opinion and their ideas. The renderings could be at the community center, so people would have a pretty good time to see them and give their opinions, because everybody in this city pays taxes, not just the people in the small area that a project may be done. And that's why I think that it should be up for a while, as I say, at the community center, because it would bring life to the community center. The community center, when you walk in, is really, really has no aesthetic charm. It reminds me, I've been in operating theaters that have more warmth than the community center when you go in, and I think it would be kind of nice every once in a while to have the projects up so everyone can give their opinion. They'd have uh, papers that say, okay, what do you think, and what, and every once in a while somebody should be there, but at least a short time, not a while, so everybody can have the opportunity to give their opinion, not just 1 hour, because it's interesting as to what is being projected. And somebody might have an idea that nobody else may have thought of. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time. And I hope it's something that you look into, because I do feel that everybody should have the opportunity, since we all pay taxes, we should have the opportunity to give our opinions on new projects and developments in town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Todd Harrison, followed by Catherine Warner.
Mr. Harrison, good evening.
Was out of my time. My name is Todd Harrison, and I'm one of the endangered residents of the Rancho La Paz Mobile Home Park. Hello again, Mr. Mayor and council members. Mayor, in your center seat, you've heard a lot of grief from me over time as I talk about what I see should be done and any failures to meet what I expect. Last session, you responded to my comments about the rats at Rancho La Paz by involving Orange County Vector Control. They reached out to us quickly, visited repeatedly, and took the owners to task for not dealing with the problem. Thank you. Gratitude only goes so far, though, so I will still not give this council any slack. There has been much positive press for the rapid intervention about the cruel intent of the owners of the Ventana apartments. I'm sure more will be done about the latest attack on the senior and disabled residents, such as barring elevator use at set times, making them prisoners. But that did not have to happen. Had the former city council taken effective action a few years ago when the residents of Rancho La Paz were first attacked, there could have been laws, limits, and potential consequences in place before things went so badly at Ventana. Collectively up there, you need to learn from the repeated lessons of what unchecked predatory landlords are capable of doing to their most vulnerable tenants. It should not take repeated examples. Never mind distant and slow-moving Sacramento legislators waking up to the issue. The city is the first layer of our civic protection and should be aware, involved, and quickly reactive to things happening right here at the local level. Just how many examples of this sort of predation do you need before you do something? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Catherine Warner, followed by Jose Rodriguez.
Ms. Warner, good evening.
Good evening. Mayor Jung, nice to meet you. We were in communication over the last few days via email. To the rest of the council members, thank you for hearing me tonight. I am standing before this evening to bring attention to the business 17th Door, located at 1851 West Orange Thorpe. Not only has this business disrupted our neighborhood's quality of life, but it brings great concern for our neighborhood and city when it comes to safety. This is a torture experience disguised as a haunted house attraction. It's only a matter of time that their homemade rooms and practices severely injure someone, or worse yet, cause a fatality. 17th Door is located directly behind the neighborhood of South Cedar. They personally share my backyard wall with their parking lot. They do over half of their attraction in this parking lot. Their entrance, line to get in, waiver signing station, field trip van attraction, among other mazes and shenanigans take place in this parking lot. This business starts operation the last 2 weeks of September through the first week of November. They start out only on the weekends, but by mid-October, they also operate during the week. 17th Door has promised year after year that they will not operate during late hours and would be on top of making sure their customers and employees do not loiter in the parking lot and their attraction would remain inside. Year after year, this is not the case. Every year, they also put in their residents' mailboxes a letter with 4 free tickets to their attraction in hopes we won't complain. This year, they took it a step further. Inside the letter, they plainly asked for us to complain to them rather than the city or police and gave us a $100 Visa gift card on top of the 4 tickets. I see this more as a bribe than anything else. During the week, we are lucky if they end operation by 1 a.m., and during the weekend, it's gone as long as 2 to 3 a.m. They bang on their chain link fences. They use tasers that are extremely loud. We also have war veterans on our street, and I know some of these things are very triggering for them. They curse at the top of their lungs, and between the screams of torture and the screams of terror, it has us all on edge until they close their doors. After reaching out numerous times, I have no other choice but to speak to the police, code enforcement, and now this council. This last weekend, for example, on Friday night, they were out there till 2 a.m. And when I called the police, and I feel terrible about that because I'm using tax-paying money for resources that should be under code enforcement, but this business has it done right. They operate outside of code enforcement times. And when the police showed up, they told them to leave, whatnot. And then after that, they proceeded to turn their car alarms for 10 minutes straight. I have it all on video. Lastly, I think it's important to note that their Instagram page speaks for itself. These rooms are built by the owners themselves, and I beg to question if this
Thank you.
business has properly been inspected.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay. They have a suffocation chamber and a drowning chamber as well.
Understood.
So
Thank
with
you.
that, they need their business permits pulled and moved to a different
Thank you.
location.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing
Thank you.
me.
Thank
Next
you.
speaker is Jose Rodriguez, followed by Tanya McCrory.
Hello, council members, mayor. I'm going to speak in Spanish first for my district. I'm in Sara's district, and I'll speak in English afterwards. Mi nombre es José Luis Rodríguez. Yo vivo en Truslo. Concejal actual Amat Sara, usted fue acusado y procesado por el fiscal. Usted dice que fue exonerado, sin embargo, no mostrará ninguna prueba real y tangible. Su falta de voluntad para mostrar pruebas demuestra que es culpable de los cargos. Tienes que confesar.
So he's talking about an incident that's not pertinent to the city council.
It has to be within the subject matter jurisdiction. I don't know what it is.
But
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You first. Hello, my name is Jose Luis Rodriguez. I live on Truslo. Current council member Ahmad Sara, you were charged and arraigned by the DA. You say you were exonerated, yet you won't show any real, tangible proof. Your unwillingness to show proof shows you're guilty as charged. You need to come clean and stop lying. Okay. We don't want a compulsive liar representing us.
So is that under the city purview?
It's up to the council. Clearly, it is more of a personal attack as opposed to a substantive issue, but it's up to the mayor.
Okay. Is that it, sir?
I was almost done. We want someone that will serve the people, not himself. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment,
Next
please.
speaker, Tanya McCrory, followed by Curtis Gamble.
Good evening, Council. Tanya McCrory, Fullerton resident. The Guns for Gas campaign is a completely bonkers idea and the typical kind of nonsense I have come to expect from Supervisor Chafee. First, our government raises our gas prices to an outrageous amount, and now you're saying if you trade in your guns, maybe you can afford your gas. You should be ashamed to even utter such a statement. How about affordable gas and legal guns for law-abiding citizens? Is that too much to ask for? Somehow, I don't think the criminals will be lining up to hand back their guns for a Target gift card. But good luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next
Next
speaker
speaker.
is Curtis Gamble, followed by ZJ Hahn.
Mr. Gamble.
Mr.
Mr.
Gamble, you're
Gamble.
the next speaker.
You're the next speaker, sir.
Sorry about that. Curtis Campbell. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm an activist for the homeless and the veterans, and I just like to talk, as I always talk, share with you some of the things that are going on. My concern because normally, I do the regular little speech about helping the homeless, but basically, it never really get listened to. So I don't know what to do. I come here every time I speak. We have 200 homeless people in the city of Fullerton. We're trying to get them off the streets. We have this, I guess I would call it a fake navigation center.
Sir, we are talking about that. That's actually an agendized item. Why don't you wait until that point to make public comment then? How about that?
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Other than that, I just want to say that we have 2 seats that are open for the city council, and we have new members that I hope get voted in. Because I'll be honest, we haven't done enough for the homeless. When I come and I talk to you guys, you never want to talk to me. And this has been going on for almost 4 years. So I hope to replace the 2 city councils that are running so that we can get the help for the homeless that we need, so that we can go by the city's municipal code for emergency shelters and follow those guidelines. So it's very important that you understand that things are going to change, because if we bring in new council members that don't have all these closed doors meetings and leave out the public, we're going to make the changes that we need. I really appreciate everything that we accomplished. I really appreciate everything that we have accomplished in the past, but like any basketball game or football game, you can't count what you did last season. You have to look forward to the future. And as far as homeless, we haven't done that. You guys have refused to talk to me about the home. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I just like to say again, thank you guys for all the things that you're done and that you're going to do in the future. But we need to do more. We need to talk. You guys need to talk to me, okay? Because I speak to mostly all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is ZJ Hahn, and then our last speaker registered in chambers is Tony Castro.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, Mr. Councilman Zara, Councilman Silva, Councilman Dunlop. And also to the fine department heads that work for Fullerton and our great and fantastic staff that work at Fullerton. My name is ZJ Hahn. I became familiar with Fullerton when I moved here in 1978. I have a lot invested in this city. Since I've been coming to these meetings the last 10 months, I know that the city has got some budget constraints. We have lights that are out. We have Hunt Library that's not up and running. We're down, from last I heard, 20 sworn officers, frontline responders. And I see all these fine firemen here. So I want to just share a few thoughts with you guys and the whole city. I'm sorry I'm late, but my tire hit a pothole in Fullerton. I had to go down to the tire store and address that. And we know that the streets are not getting paved because I've been here for 10 months, and we're picking and choosing what streets can get covered because of budgetary constraints. So Kimberly-Clark closed in 2018. It was 66 acres of land, gentlemen and ladies. What has the city done? They put in this is general comment. Okay, fine, no problem. I know you have a very particular way you do things. You're very tight about that. And so I see the license
Please move
plate,
forward. Go ahead.
USC Trojans.
Thank you.
I hope there's some business sense on the board here and not just some coach somewhere. So they've got 66 acres at Kimberly-Clark, and they've turned it into these giant warehouses. And when I've emailed the city clerk, it's a very low tax base. But we have the 91 freeway that runs east and west, the 57 freeway that runs north and south, and we have communities around here, Anaheim, Placentia, Yorba Linda, Whittier. None of these places have a automobile zone, Cerritos Auto Square. They don't have an auto square. And that land, 66 acres, would have most benefited to use it for new car dealerships. We've lost a Cadillac dealership on Orangethorpe. We lost the Dodge dealership. We had Chevrolet was on Commonwealth. All these people would move in there. Ford would move in there. Toyota's sitting alone on Euclid. They would move in there. The tax on a car in 2017, the average tax was $3,017. If you had 20 dealerships there selling 20 cars a month, which is kind of how car dealerships break even, the city would have $16 million. That would pay for all you firemen, all the streets to get paved. How do I know? How do you want to know? Go down to Cerritos, just down the 91 freeway, about 6 miles. Drive into their public library. It's a 2-story, multi-million-dollar library. How do they pay for that? The Cerritos Auto Square, a huge tax base. Yet we let these 66 acres go to 4 250,000 square foot warehouses that there's just stuff's going to get trucked in, not sold, and then taken out and delivered. And so it's no tax base for that land.
And the last speaker in chambers is Tony Castro.
Mr. Castro, good evening.
I like your idea. I want to say yes, Cerritos. I'm Tony Castro. I'm running for Fullerton City Council, District 5. And I would like to address the council today to let you know a couple ideas that I have. I know you guys are going to be addressing homelessness. It's my top priority, number one issue.
This is not for campaigning, sir. If
Okay,
you've got a comment you'd like to make to
I would like
council,
to make a
go
comment,
ahead.
yes.
Please.
I would like the council to strongly consider and do whatever you have to do, whether it's working with the legislature, Congress, but I believe that Fullerton needs a rent control. And so we need to implement this rent control because we need to prevent homelessness. My apartment, I live in a one-bedroom apartment on Commonwealth, $1,800 a month. November 1st, it's going up to $2,400 a month. I have to move in a family member with me to help me with the rent now. This is unacceptable. We could do better than this. And so I would like to ask the council, for those of you, most of you who are accepting corporate money as donations for your campaign, to please return your corporate donations so that you can be free to help the people. Another thing is, I would like to see something done about saving the Fullerton Fire Department. I have some ideas. And so I would like to...
That's on the agenda.
That's on the agenda, okay. Well, in that case, the biggest thing right now is that I'm concerned is that for you guys who did accept those corporate donations, please return them so that you guys can be free to fight for us and not owe favors and have your hands tied to other corporations. And some of you guys, most of you guys are taking corporate money and working for corporate lobbyists instead of the people. And so if we get more people involved to get into the council, then we can, people that will refuse this corporate money, we can stand up to the corporations and say no and bring some revenue back so that we can save the fire department. I don't want to see them leave. I think that we need to address this issue more in depth, and this is more in depth. And this is a very important issue to me. And I would like to see the council do whatever you guys can to reshift some funds and let you know that I can't say anything about my campaign. So.
All right, very good, sir. Have a good evening, all right?
Thank you very much.
You bet.
So those are my two concerns, rent control and 3 concerns. Return your corporate donations, and let's do something to save the fire department. Thank you.
Very well. Madam City Clerk.
No more speakers, and we have no one with their hand raised in Zoom.
Very good. We'll bring it back to council and move on to the consent calendar. Actually,
Mayor,
no.
if I may?
Yes, please.
I would like to pull items 5 and 7.
On the consent calendar?
Yes,
We'll go ahead and do that, sir. Let's do, before I forget, you'll have to pardon me, Councilman Zara. Well, let's do staff reports and city council reports. Mr. City Manager, can you give the public an update on the 91 freeway at Euclid, sir?
Sure. Yes, Mayor Jung and city council members, I've asked Daisy Perez, who's our deputy city manager and who's coordinating our efforts on homeless encampments and homeless response, to get up and give a brief update on that.
Great. Ms. Perez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A couple things that we are currently working on. So the first is scheduling regular cleanups of that area, both with our contractor and Caltrans. We know that's a temporary solution, so I am having conversations with Caltrans on making some infrastructure changes there so that problem no longer happens. And then third, we have very limited shelter beds right now in the North Spa, but we're looking at options for expanding that so we can get more folks off the streets.
Very good. And
Thank you.
that, too, is also an agenda item for us this evening as well.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have a question for Daisy.
Of course, sir. Go ahead.
Ms. Daisy. In working with Caltrans, are you considering the I guess it's the on-ramp on the 91 in Lemon Harbor? Because there's still an encampment there going on.
Yes, so that I've also spoken to them about that area, and that's the next one on their list.
And the next thing is, I know that one idea that we brought forward was the going with Caltrans or the state's Clean California initiative so that we can have constant access? Is that something that's still moving forward?
That is something we're working on. And then in general, we're also working closely with Caltrans for a dump day, cleanup day event this Saturday from 9 to 12 at the Fullerton Park and Ride. So to the extent that we encourage all residents to get rid of large, bulky items so that they end up at the dumpsters and not in our neighborhoods.
All right, very well.
Thank
Anything
you.
further, Councilman?
No, that's it. Thanks.
All right, very well.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Silva.
And it may be addressed later on, but you mentioned we don't have enough shelter pets. So how many do we have in Placentia and how many do we have in Buena Park right now?
We get reports daily from our coordinators, and sometimes we have one available, sometimes there isn't any available. It changes every day.
So the beds that we are paying for, they're being used?
Correct. Those are full.
Those are full. Oh, okay. And then how many are we paying for?
I'm not sure exactly what that number is, but we can get back to you on that.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, would you?
I believe the North Spa altogether is 200 to 250 beds, but that's collectively across the North Spa, which North Spa is the northern cities in Orange County. And I don't believe there's a specific number attached to Fullerton itself, but it's all of the cities collectively.
And just one last question. How much are we paying for the usage of those beds in those two shelters?
I can answer that. We pay about $600,000 to $700,000 a year on that, and we use grant funding that we receive from the state to cover that.
Okay. And so we just put it into the pot. There's 250 beds, and if the other cities are quicker to get their homeless in there, we're left out, in essence.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, very well. And then, Mr. City Manager, there were some concerns about 17th Door. They receive quite a bit of press regarding their haunted house. I suppose this is negative concerns from the residents.
So I can get back with the interim community development director on that. We have, I believe this has been an ongoing facility for Halloween in past years also. There have been safety checks on the facility, but we can definitely follow up on all those concerns, especially the 1 a.m., 2 a.m., some of those concerns.
Very good. All right, we'll go to, unless there's anything further from staff, we'll go to council reports. We'll go left to right. Councilmember Silva, you got anything, sir?
Just quickly to Mr. Castro, I think Mr. Zara and I have been the only ones here that have advocated for some sort of rent control. And I've been on here 6 years, and I think from day one I was advocating for that, and it was, you could have heard a pin drop up at the dais, and so the two of us have been advocating for that. So hopefully with the new council, we can get 3 and do something about it, but it does take 3 votes, and so again, just to make you aware that there are some advocates up here for the affordable housing and control of rents.
Sir, I think he left for the evening. Perhaps he went about his campaign. All right, very well. Councilmember Dunlap, anything, sir?
Well, on that note, I guess I won't bother Mr. Castro with the facts, but the reality is there's already statewide rent control in effect. And I think he pointed out that he was renting a 1-bedroom apartment for $1,800 that'll soon be $2,400, which actually this rent increase would be outlawed under the state rent control, AB 1482. So perhaps he can find a housing advocate to help him out with that, because clearly his landlord, if that's in fact the truth, is not following the law. I did want to share one other nice comment or nice Fullerton moment. For those of you that are baseball fans, the Angels, of course, didn't make it to the postseason, but recently celebrated the retirement of their catcher, Kurt Suzuki. And Kurt, of course, for many of you that follow baseball, was a Fullerton Titan. And when they pulled him out of his final game, Phil Nevin, who was the coach of the Angels, went to the mound as Mike Lorenzen, who's a pitcher for the Angels, was also on the mound. So it's a very interesting moment because we had 3 ties, not just to the to Fullerton, but we actually had there was a Fullerton Indian, of course, with Mike Lorenzen, the pitcher, on the mound as well. So very special moment to end a great career, somebody that won the College World Series and also World Series when he was with the Washington Nationals. So that's all for my report.
All right, very well, sir. We'll go to my right. Councilmember Zara, anything, sir?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, so there's a couple of things. I know we talked about the Ventana and we found out that their increases were supposed to have been reported, or is the city informed prior to the increases of their rent. They did go through some what I consider harassment. All of that was retracted quickly once it was exposed. But they are coming up with an increase, another increase in their an automatic increase, it seems. And my question is, where are we on the legal issues here? Because they clearly were in violation of our city contract with them. And we have to have some sort of action here. It seems wrong that they would be moving forward with yet another increase, and still we have not been informed.
So, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Zara, I can address that. So I'm in communication with the management regarding the increase that's supposed to go in, I believe, November 1st, and they were supposed to inform, which they have informed us now, of that increase, but I have also communicated with them about the 1 year. We don't have a formal requirement on the 1 year that it has to be 1 year out, and I believe they are doing increases for tenants whose rent contracts come up after that November 1st, but I'm still in communication with them on it and in communication with the state attorney's office on that.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, this is one of those places where, I mean, this is a low-income senior residence, and even with rent control, rent control does not apply to these. So there's this loophole in our state laws that allows for even a gouging on these low-income residences. And I really would like I'd love to see our council send out a letter to our state legislators in explaining this situation, so that maybe it could be addressed on the state level or even a congressional level. So I hope our council and our mayor would allow for at least a letter explaining the situation from our city, because I think this is not the first time this has happened. We've seen it at the Palm Gardens as well. We addressed that in another manner a couple of years ago. But this is ongoing, and I think we need to
I'll work with the city manager. We'll try and craft something.
Let's see. And then one final thing also, on the same kind of note on housing, I've been in touch with the residents of Fullerton Heights. This is a supportive housing apartment that was built and opened, I think, in 2019.
2017.
And I think the grand opening was 2019, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Because I attended that. That was one of the first things I attended. And this was supposed to be something that was unique and provided services. However, there was a pandemic, a change of ownership to management, and since then, I was informed that there were 9 deaths there, including 1 suicide. And that the residents are plus other incidences, but the residents are saying there hasn't been adequate supportive services. So what I'd like us to do as a council is to look into this matter officially, and contact the current owners and start exploring. I'd like to see what happened that one apartment complex has 9 deaths.
I think, I don't know that that's within the purview of the council with regards to being investigators or criminologists, but I do agree with you. I think it's an exorbitant amount, and let's see what we can find out then.
The least we can do is look into it and have a conversation about
Understood.
it and see if there's anything else that
I agree.
can happen. So that's all I have. I know it's not the most pleasant of reports, but sometimes these things happen. Thank you.
Very well, sir. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just on that note, Mr. Mayor, just to piggyback on his before we go, could we as a city council request for the DA or the state attorney general to investigate such an issue if we make a request?
Why don't we ask the chief?
Whoever can answer that.
I'm actually looking up the address as we speak to confirm the amount of deaths that have taken place there, to see if they were attended or unattended, and kind of what the coroner's office ruled them to be. And so once I have that information, I can better answer your request. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, but it really depends on the root cause of someone's passing. Maybe it was COVID-related or drugs or alcohol-related. So we need to determine that first, and then we can give you a better guidance on the course of action from there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I only want to request to pull item number 4 from the consent calendar. And I just wanted to add to that last conversation, any citizen can make such complaint, and particularly tenants there who might be concerned.
All right, sir. Very well. That concludes our city council and staff reports. Next on is an appointment by Councilmember Dunlap to the Active Transportation Committee. Sir?
Sure. I'd like to appoint Eric Walters to the Active Transportation Committee.
Very well. I'll second that. Madam City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
And on to the consent calendar. I know that Councilman Zara, you had, what was it, 4, 5?
5 and 7.
5 and 7, thank you.
I'll
5
move
and
the
7.
balance.
And I do.
Second.
These
Go
are
ahead, sir.
simple questions I have. If you want to
We'll take them first.
take them first.
Sure. All right, very well. So if I can get a motion from Councilmember Dunlap to move the balance. Is there a second?
Second.
Very well. Madam City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva. Yes. Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
Mayor Jung.
Aye. So number 4 was pulled by the Mayor Pro Tem, I believe, right, sir?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to highlight some of the information contained in the agenda item transmittal here. It's the problem statement outlined here is the Fullerton Police Department consistently ranks toward the top countywide for DUI arrests, 398 DUI arrests in 2020. And sadly, the city also experienced 8 traffic-related fatalities in calendar year 2020, down from a record high in 2018, which had 14 traffic-related fatal crashes. Although down from 2018, the high number of total crashes in conjunction with a consistently high number of DUI arrests both point to the absolute need for the continuation of OTS-funded traffic pedestrian safety enforcement. And there is a lot more in the way of interesting statistics in here, which shows certainly an elevated need for the proper application of these grant funds. I recall back many years ago when the Angels pitcher Nick Adenhart was killed at that horrific collision at Lemon and Orangethorpe. And some more data in what's outlined here points out that a lot of the DUIs may not have been intoxicated in Fullerton. In fact, the driver in that case lived in Riverside and was transiting through Fullerton. He left Buena Park. So these statistics, I thought it was a pretty good job of reporting these statistics and pointing out, trying to read a little bit between the lines on it. But certainly the other issue with the council, why I thought I wanted to have this see the light of day here tonight, is that this council gets accused very often of being freewheeling when it comes to ABC licenses and for allowing new drinking establishments. I just wanted to emphasize in public here that I believe it's very important that each of these issues get a thorough hearing at the Planning Commission level, which handles most ABC issues, and then that they see the light of day at the council meetings as well. There's a move to more and more ministerial type decisions, and basically these don't receive the full public hearing that they deserve, and at both levels, at the Planning Commission and then at the City Council. And that was the only reason I pulled this, Mr. Mayor.
Understood, sir. So we'll now hear public comments on this item. Seeing none in chambers, or are there any registered? Very
Then
good.
I would move approval then.
Very well.
I'll second.
Any in Zoom? Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes unanimous.
And then Councilmember Zara, you had 5, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the same spirit of what Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker was saying about our alcoholic establishments. One thing that I came across here on item 5 was, I'm going to read the line here. Additionally, some businesses overserve patrons or serve minors who they are either intentionally or unintentionally permit into these age-restricted establishments. So this is a grant that will help us and our police department go in and start investigating some of these. My question is, oftentimes you arrest some of the DUI violators, individuals. Some are young and underage, so their life is kind of ruined. What are we doing for the businesses that are serving intentionally? Do we have a record of all of this? Have we caught anyone? What are the consequences? And would this grant be used to also investigate them?
Let's ask our chief of police. Chief Dunn.
So off the top of my head, I'm not certain of a number of times that we've identified a location that's intentionally over-serving or intentionally serving underage patrons. So I could get that information and send it to the council. The majority of this fund is for the police department to conduct their criminal-related investigations as it relates to that type of behavior. Really, it's the interdiction of those who are underaged prior to them actually consuming, or they're 1 or 2 drinks into it and we determine that they're not of age, and then we can intercede before they're at the point of intoxication. It also allows us, for our ECHO unit, which is the unit that's charged with the downtown patrol, to work with the bartenders and provide them training, and oftentimes and this is going to sound really simple, but placing a sign that says the law prohibits overservice, because what happens is when these bartenders engage with these folks, there's often an argument that occurs, and by just simply putting the signs up across the bar, they can point to the sign and let them know that they've been in trouble before, and therefore it kind of quells the argument. So a lot of that goes into this. The focus on the other side, what happens to them, is often the lead agency in that is the Alcoholic Beverage Control, because there's a lot of teeth behind their licensing. And so we work very closely with them to give them the information they need to make determinations about the ongoing sale of their license, maybe putting them on a suspension and or a probationary period for their licensing, which is truly where it hits them. Very often when I've been out there, I don't see intentional overservice. There's, people use fake IDs, they try to get in, and by and large, a lot of the businesses down there do a great job of vetting out those IDs prior to people making it in, but people do make it in, and that's really their goal. That's why they're in line, is to get into those establishments. And so oftentimes it results in a partnership and then trying to prevent rather than the backside. But I can get you the details on how many times we've gone after a particular establishment for those types of violations.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that our PD is doing. They really have it cut out for them, and I'm supportive of this. I think this is a good proactive project. So I will. I guess there may be public comment. Yeah.
Yes, we'll go
I
to
have
public.
one follow-up with the chief before we go to that.
Indeed, go ahead, sir.
I'm just curious. I know it's a problem in many cases, drinking in the parking lots and parking structures, a form of preloading, even before these people visit any establishment downtown. How big a factor do you think that can be on some peak evenings down there?
Certainly, it is where we see people already arriving in establishments intoxicated, and where we get the most advantage in our enforcement nights. So, for example, our busy nights are when there's big games or there's a UFC fight on television. A lot of the locations will host parties, and that brings people, but they don't necessarily want to pay for the drinks at the establishment, so they occupy our various parking structures and do what we call pre-gaming. So oftentimes, our enforcement starts long before the event starts to try to quell that in those structures before they even get there. And we do maximum enforcement, zero tolerance, and we've found guns, we've found other items on people before they've made it down to our establishments and they've been in our parking structures.
We hadn't spoken about this, but I was wondering how big a priority that was, because often the establishments can be victimized in a way.
Is 100% our focus. Anytime we know, and there are certain days of the year where we know it's particularly busy, we will always staff up for the hours leading up to the event so that we can spend a majority of our time in those structures and surrounding parking lots to try to prevent issues from happening.
Because intoxication can be had at any supermarket, any convenience store, any drugstore, buying bottled liquor and drinking it even before they enter an establishment.
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right, very well. We'll go to public comment. Madam City Clerk, any registered from public comment
No
on this
one
item?
registered to speak on this item, and no one with their hand raised in suit.
All right, very well. Madam City Clerk, we'll look for a motion or a second from... Hey, what's going on?
I didn't know this was being pulled, or I would have put my name down. Zara and I almost never agree, but I'm going to do what he did last time and agree with him. So the thing that I would recommend is that if you really want the data from the police, you should also look into the enforcement that's happening that the police have control over. It's been a while since I've looked into it, but the last I checked, the police department has the authority to pull entertainment permits, which are tied to conditional use permits and other things, and that's almost never done in this city. So almost no enforcement that the police can do is done tied to these issues of over-serving and all that. Yeah, ABC can come in and do what they do with the licensing, but there is a lot of things that are just ignored on the police's side or on city council side. When you've got we had the problems for years about the noise ordinance. I mean, I went around downtown with a noise meter just for amusement's sake, and everyone was in violation, and the police department did nothing about that. People were in gross violations of the conditional use permits. Nothing was done about that. I mean, like I said, the entertainment permits used to be tied to the CUPs, and they were never revoked. So everyone was just sort of getting away with everything, and it was always pushed off into, well, another department will do it, ABC will come in or whatever. So I'd also encourage you to look into how much enforcement is possible from the city side, from PD side, and how much is actually being done. And if you just want to have fun with it, correlate the bars that have the most calls to them to their donations to city council candidates or council members, because most of the bars are owned by a handful of developers who also donate heavily to council candidates. So maybe see the correlation of why there's no enforcement in our downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson, if you want to make further comment on any other additional items, I encourage you to register with the city clerk's office. All right, I will look forward to a motion on this to move this item.
So moved.
Very well. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Councilmember Zara.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes unanimous.
And Councilmember Zara, you had number 7 as well? This is the contract extension with Falk Mobile Health Corp. For emergency ambulance transport.
This is really more of a commentary than anything else that I'd like to make on this, because this is I know it's not a very large amount of money here, or an increase, but it's a 3.4 increase on a contract with a private entity. And we see this often. They come on consent calendar, automatic increases. And I find it very interesting and almost ironic that when it comes to our employees, they have to go through a meet and confer process and so many loops and loopholes and it just takes forever and ever to get a few percentage points. And yet when we outsource to private entities, all they need to do is say, hey, there's a fuel increase and a wage increase, so we want a percentage increase. And it's on consent automatically. No discussions in closed session, no negotiations. All of this is ministerial on an administrative level. And we see these on small contracts and large contracts. So when it comes to our public employees that have to really struggle to get a decent wage for the work they do, a private entity gets it automatically. Now, there is a reduction here for our revenue, so we are eating this up, this increase. the taxpayer is losing money on this increase. But you know, I don't know what their records are or what their finances are as far as the private entity. But why is it that we as the taxpayers have to take always the brunt of it? There's no pass-through here. We can't raise the cost on our residents, and we shouldn't. But we are, in a sense. We're losing money on this. So I just find it very ironic that is the case.
Well, I encourage you to vote no on it if you don't.
Oh, I certainly will.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I need to comment just to disagree. It's not really a valid comparison because in this case there are external materials and items, and a 3.4% increase is pretty low considering the current state of inflation, and particularly gasoline, fuel. In labor situation, you don't really have that as an external factor. So the comparison misses the mark. But I think we're all looking at very large increases because of runaway inflation right now, and particularly transportation costs. So to me, it's a very valid request by this contractor.
Very well. We'll now hear public comments on this item.
I do have one person registered, CJ Hahn,
Okay.
and there are no hands raised in Zoom.
Mr. Hahn, I encourage you to address council, not the public.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member Zara, Council Member Silva, and Council Member Dunlop. The way I view what I've just heard is that one council member is asking for some scrutiny about how we spend money, and the other council member says it's not a bad increase because it's only 3.4%. It's the scrutiny that you guys have to take care of. So that's what the one council member was asking for, just some scrutiny on all these automatic, we're going to raise this, it's $80,000 and it comes out of the general budget. And I am a taxpayer, and I bet many of these people here are taxpayers. And again, it comes down to taxes and the money and the revenues that the city generates. And we've had opportunities to bring in really great revenue generating businesses. We've had a gift of 66 acres, and our planning, our building commission, we're putting in all these warehouses when we could have business that has a tax base to fund this city in the tune of $16 million annually. So I'm all for scrutiny. Thank you for the council member who asked for some scrutiny in this city. And all the other fun stuff to get, a donation to your reelection fund. Like on that piece of 66 acres, the city got nothing out of that, but I hope the guys who planned that got something. As a businessman, I hope somebody got some money donated to the reelection fund, because if not, that's a lose-lose for the city and for the council members. Go Titans, go Hornets.
Thank you. Anything further? Very well.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, before we take a vote on this.
Sure.
I would like to ask that for future, any of these contracts, that we don't that all these contractors should provide us some sort of financial proof and justification of this increase, and not just take their word for it, especially for the public, because just a one page here. And this is not just this one item. This is a small item, but we've seen this in many other larger items as well. So I think a little bit more openness from our partners that we are contracting with.
I'm sure staff heard you on the matter.
Yep.
All right. I'll look forward to a motion on this to move this item forward.
I'll move the item.
Very well. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dunlap.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Councilmember Zara.
No.
Councilmember Whitaker. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Aye.
And Mayor Jung.
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
Very well. We have no public hearings this evening. Our first regular business item is the OCFA proposal. And I think we have, who is presenting this? Is this Chief Lozier, or are you going to start, Mr. City Manager?
Yes,
Right.
Mayor Jung and City Council members, I'll start with the presentation. I will. Yes.
I'm overriding the city manager for just a moment, just to remind people that if you'd like to speak on this item, to please register next door in the city manager's office, and we'll make sure we'll call you up to speak on this item.
So Mayor Jung and City Council members, I'll do the first part of the presentation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lozier, who will finish up the presentation, and then turn it back to me for final word. Background, as you're well aware, we have had discussions on this in September on this item. We've had discussions on this item in September. We've had a lot of information in your packet, and so we're going to just give you a overview, and then we are prepared to go into more detail as you desire. So on October 2021, OCFA submitted fire service proposal. On January 22nd, on January 2022, OCFA's proposal was presented to the City Council, and then in March, Management Partners was then hired by the city at that time to review the OCFA proposal and provide an analysis to the City Council. In September, that analysis came back from Management Partners. The report was presented to the City Council, and the report is in your packet and was discussed in the September 2022 meeting. At that time, the council directed staff to return within 60 days, which we are doing today with this report. As an overview of the OCFA proposal, OCFA proposal does not include certain costs such as city legacy costs, expenses, or revenues from retained services. The city's legacy costs includes things such as unfunded liability for the retirement system, retiree medical, property insurance, workers' comp, and some other related costs. And then the city also has some retained expenses that were not included as part of the analysis of the OCFA contract. To give you a background on the OCFA contract that was proposed, it was a $22.8 million cost. Amortized for the next year would be another $200,000. And then with city legacy costs, $7.4 million. City retained service expenses would include $2.8 million. You'd reduce the revenue that was not put in that we do receive, which is $5.45 million in revenue. That comes out to a cost in the contract of approximately $27.86 million. With this initial assessment, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Lozier to go over the proposed fire roadmap if you decide to stay with the City of Fullerton running the fire department.
Chief Lozier, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Based upon City Council discussion and to aid in that decision-making process, we did develop a roadmap, and really what that consisted of is a stabilization strategy to rebuild the fire department if that was the direction that Council chose. Before I go a little bit further into that, I want to recognize the work of our HR, Public Works, Finance, City Manager's Office, and my staff on gathering up all of this information. As you can see through the agenda packet, there is a lot of information. But in order to get this together and provide a viable plan or roadmap for you to at least understand based upon my experience and my staff's experience, we feel is something that is viable to move the city forward if it is chosen to retain its fire department. The costing scenarios for the roadmap are included in the agenda attachment 3A as well, and those were costed out through our finance department. There are three components that we put together: compensation, apparatus replacement, and our deployment. Compensation being really the primary or the cornerstone for this roadmap to build upon. As we've discussed in previous meetings and throughout the agenda packet, the fire department needs to be corrected or have an adjustment made to compensation to retain our employees. Just last Friday, I did receive a resignation from a 5-year firefighter paramedic who's going to a neighboring agency, and this is one of, unfortunately, many that I've gotten throughout the last several years and really increasing over the last 2 years. So the compensation, I think partnering between City Council, City Manager's Office, our labor, and myself to help figure out what that is, to retain our personnel and then begin to build our department is probably of the utmost concern with or importance for this particular roadmap. Second component would be our apparatus replacement. As everybody knows here, fire apparatus are extremely expensive. They have to start on a dime from zero to moving without any hesitation. And the more we can keep them in service, not out of service looking for parts, the better it is we're able to provide that service. We do, working with our Public Works Department and our Finance Department, we've been trying to work through a plan to allocate funds accordingly. But after the recession in 2008, we've had a long pause of contributing to that heavy apparatus allocation fund. And so moving forward, it is anticipated that there would have to be an increase to that fund. Immediate needs that we have right now as it relates to our apparatus, we have 3 fire engines that are over the industry standard, National Fire Protection Association standard of 20 years for our fire engines. One at 20 years, another is 3 years over that at 23 years old, 2 rigs at 23 years old. All 3 of them over 210,000 miles. So these are apparatus that we are having difficulty finding parts for and having difficulty keeping them on the road so that we are able to respond in a safe fashion. So that need is being requested to right out of the gate. 2 engines. One of those engines would be replaced with a quint. A quint is a fire apparatus that not only can provide a high volume of water, but also can provide that at an elevated stream to our mid-rise buildings within our city. We do have $750,000 earmarked in our heavy equipment apparatus fund to put towards this particular apparatus. The unfortunate part about the fire apparatus industry, just like many industries that we've touched upon, is there is a major lag in manufacture time and parts. So for these fire engines, once we initiate that purchase order, we are about 2 to 2.5 years out from receiving those pieces of equipment. At the same time, like many of the services that we're talking about here, there are increases that are coming at 6 months and 12-month time periods instead of just annually.
Chief, if I may interrupt for a moment.
Yes, sir.
The purchasing of these equipment, if we joined OCFA, we'd still have to purchase this equipment, right?
No.
Are they purchasing it and then billing us for it? I mean, how does that work?
As part of their proposal, their depreciation for their apparatus, roughly $300,000, and includes 2 trucks and 4 engines. Part of that is purchasing this quint fire apparatus. That's considered part of that. So that $750,000 would go towards that purchase.
Okay, so we're not getting a discount by OCFA's purchasing or their capacity to purchase in scale or volume, right?
Well, we don't directly, but the way that their operation works, and I'd probably best ask one of their representatives to explain that a little better. But that economy of scale as it relates to apparatus is definitely a positive aspect of regionalization.
Okay, very well. Keep going, sir. I'm sorry to interrupt.
The last part of that roadmap is deployment. And on that last, I'm sorry, we can go down a couple slides behind. There we go. We do have a 25% creeping up towards 28% vacancy rate right now in my 3 divisions. So that's our suppression or our firefighter rank, our administrative staff, and then our fire prevention staff. So it will take considerable resources, time, and capital to build back up our fire department in all of those ranks across the board. And that is recruiting, that's hiring, that's training, that's promoting. So even right now, if we wanted to redeploy and add a unit of sorts, we don't have the promotable personnel or the paramedics to do so. So that's why even in this table, and I tried to outline it as far as years, you'll see in 2024, 25, that's when we anticipate we'll have the correct number of personnel to even move forward with putting into service our Engine 6 or our 7th fire apparatus and staffed appropriately. The remaining years there of 25 through 27 fiscal years, as one option, it is having units that are 4.0 staffed that are ALS or paramedic staffed and 3.0 staffed that are ALS paramedic staffed, and then each fiscal year restaffing those 3.0 engines to 4.0 staffing paramedic units, feathered in over 6 total fiscal years. The reason for this is to have a 7th unit to aid in the workload that is coming out of Station 1, but then also to add back in the importance of that 4-person staffed unit where we have two medical, 2-for-1 apparatus as far as our medical concerns, and then also being able to address our structure fires as quickly as possible according to OSHA standards. So the total amount of people there, and we also have 1 customer service representative and our fire plan check specialist are currently on our being used for vacancy savings as part of our current fiscal year budget. I would request to have those be funded. Those are the support parts of my department that in order to rebuild this department are going to be paramount for me and my staff to be able to do that. So this is a lot. There's a lot of complexities to it. And so talking it over, I think it's very important to come back to council and provide 90-day progress reports on how we are doing. Are we retaining personnel? How is our recruitment going? Do we need to open up any of our ranks to the outside, or we have the personnel in our city that's able to take this and promote into those positions? So that 90-day progress report, I believe, is very important. Secondarily to that, as we move forward with any type of staffing changes or deployment changes, a thorough report supporting those changes would be done and presented to you at a separate meeting to make sure that we are moving in the direction that is based upon industry standards. It meets the needs of our community, is a third-party look at what we deliver, and just validate the information that we're proposing to move forward.
So, Chief, if I may, this council, really beyond any other I've seen or witnessed, has been very agreeable to the changes that the department and you have asked for. That said, you're now full-time in Fullerton. We're not sharing you with the city of Brea anymore. What kind of recruitment efforts have happened this year to bring some firefighters to Fullerton? Has anything happened at all? Have we hired anyone this year?
Yes, we do have. Thank you for bringing that up. We do have 6 firefighters who are starting on Monday. So that will bring the number of vacancies we have in the firefighter rank down from 12 to 6. So we'll have 6 remaining. On top of that, we will have the balance of 2 engineers and 2 captains and 4 chief officers that once they all promote, will bump down those vacancies into the firefighter rank. We are working with HR to open up a firefighter recruitment, in which case we anticipate running an academy in the late part of summer to hopefully balance out at least half of those vacancies once we've been able to build up those promotable positions.
So we have, to some degree, tourniqueted some of the mass bleeding that was happening, correct? Some marginal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've taken a step.
Very well. Thank you. Please continue.
If I may, I have a question.
Please, go ahead, sir.
Can you go back to the slide right before this? So on this, you're saying we're going to go back. I guess these are the pre-2018 deployment or staffing numbers, 3 firefighters per engine as opposed to 4.
Correct.
So in a case like this, if there's a fire, a major incident, would this fire engine be able to respond?
Yes, the fire engine will be able to respond with 3 personnel when they're going to break the plane of immediately dangerous to life and health, IDLH environment. They would have to wait for another unit to get on scene to make sure there's 2 qualified personnel outside of that environment to be on the ready in case one of our own encounter an emergency inside.
So essentially, there could be a delayed response in a life-threatening situation because of this model.
If there is there'll be a delay putting water on the fire. If there is any knowledge of a person inside or an imminent rescue, then that can be, there's an exemption to that, and which the firefighters will make entry to try to locate the patient.
But we are risking their lives now.
Correct.
Okay. So this is not necessarily the best model of operation.
It's a model. It's an option. So the best model would be to add a 7th unit to our current deployment with 4 personnel staff. So we have 7 ALS paramedic units.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the best for our city. Correct.
So this is based on the finances, not necessarily on the adequacy of the response.
This is an option based on what we have available to us at this time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have more questions, but I'll wait for now. Thank you for now.
Very well. Sir, go ahead.
With that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager to wrap up this presentation.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor and City Council, so what is before you is a fairly direct decision, and that is option 1 would be to approve staying with the City of Fullerton as the fire service provider and rejecting the OCFA or Orange County Fire Authority proposal. In conjunction with that, asking the city manager to schedule a closed session to start discussions regarding the Fullerton firefighters memorandum of understanding. The second option before you would be to direct the city manager to enter into contract negotiations with the Orange County Fire Authority to deliver fire and emergency medical services. If you go with that option, that would be about a 120-day time frame for the implementation of that.
All right, thank you. We'll now go to public comments on this item. Madam City Clerk, what do we have members of the public that are registered to speak?
I have 11 people registered for this item.
Please.
And the first speaker is Bernard, and following that will be Nicholas Villegas.
Hello, my name is Bernard, and I am a Fullerton resident. Our fire department needs stability that our firefighters deserve. OCFA would immediately provide additional crews, equipment, and apparatus. Equipment and apparatus that is not cheap. Yet, Mr. Jung, you want to waste more time and prolong their suffering. After having already slashed the budget, you are on public record fighting for deeper cuts. How much longer Are you going to punish the loyal men and women that chose to stay and faithfully serve our communities? How long are you going to put our residents at risk of harm? Shame on you. Make a decision already. Approve the move to OCFA or approve a plan for a sustainable department. Happy Halloween and safe Halloween. Go Bruins.
Next comment.
Next speaker is Nicholas Viejas, followed by Tanya McCrory.
Thank you for your time, guys. I just wanna say that they saved my life. The fire department, Station 5, saved my life. If it wasn't up to them, I would have bled to death. They showed up before the ambulance and before anything and tourniqueted me. And if not, I would have bled to death. I wouldn't be here right now speaking. So they need OCFA. That would help them a lot, and that would help a lot of people to live. A lot of us Fullerton. I am a Fullerton resident, and I think they need the help because they are doing what they need to do, and they are saving people and doing extra. They are risking their own lives and their family just for us. And I just from David to Grant to Chris from Station 5. And Captain Martorino, thank you guys for saving my life. So they need the support and they need the extra stuff so they can keep doing what they're doing. They were the first ones on site before anybody, and that means a lot to me because I would be dead. So she can finish.
Giving the Fullerton Fire Department the backing of OFCA would just give more resident safety so that when things do happen like this, they have greater resources to be able to keep our residents safe, alive, and give the people that are doing it the support that they need so that they're able to go safe at home, safe to their families as well. So, yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Next speaker is Tanya McCrory, and following that will be Pam Keller.
Good evening, Council. I'll keep this brief because I just don't really know enough on this to speak, engaged and formally. But I'm definitely not a defund the police or defund the fire department type of girl. We need these people at our most critical moments. And I believe they deserve every kind of support that they need to do their job correctly. I do remember when I heard the chief of police, fire, who seems like a lovely man, but I heard him speak at a private event, and someone asked what happens when you're called out, and the answer was so convoluted that no one in the audience could actually understand it. And I've seen firsthand when an elderly neighbor, sprains an ankle and a police car, a fire truck, and an ambulance show up. And this is publicly taxed money that I think we can streamline that response. And I remember, Chief, when you were explaining that, it was just incredibly convoluted, and it just seemed to everyone present that there was a way to streamline this. Like the paramedic had to ride on the fire truck, and then the ambulance had to arrive, such and such, and it just seemed that it could be refined. So I wonder in this process, while I want both our police and fire departments to have what they need, I think reform is also possible. And maybe there's a middle way here where we can look at how things are being rolled out. And if it's necessary for all of those vehicles to show up to something that could be a very simple call. And I have seen it multiple times. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thanks for letting me speak.
Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Pam Keller, and then followed by ZJ Hahn.
Good evening, Mayor Jung and Fullerton City Council. I'm Pam Keller, former City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem for City of Fullerton. I'm also a very long-time Fullerton resident, and I have been a fan of the Fullerton Fire Department since 5th grade when I got my junior firefighter badge, which I still own. I'm very proud of it. It's just always been something that I've loved is our fire department, the fact that our city has our own fire department, that I grew up my children, when they had an emergency, I suddenly had a house full of people from the fire department that helped our family. When my father-in-law, in his elderly state, needed help, the fire department was there to take care of him. They continue to do many things in our community service, work in our schools. I'm a teacher in the Fullerton School District. They do a lot of partnering with us. They're really an integral part of our community. They don't just come and do emergency services, but they provide a lot more than that. So that emotion in my heart and how much I love our Fullerton Fire Department also has to be balanced by logic. I sat in your seat. I know what it's like to have to look at budgets and understand how to use our funds properly. And it is expensive to go to OCFA, but it's also extremely expensive to get this fire department back where it needs to be. Our fire department is so low right now that they're not being able to really, I know a lot of the guys are working way more overtime than they normally would be able to do, than they should be doing, that might not even be at safe levels. I'm sure there's rules about that. I didn't look into that, but I'm imagining these things are happening because there's not enough people to go around, men and women of the Fullerton Fire Department. I read all the paperwork that you had, all the reports and all of those things, and tried to look at how would I look at this if I was sitting in your shoes. And I talked to people around town to find out what their opinions were. But when it comes down to it, we need to have a stable fire department, and we need to be able to have those services. And I really do think partnering with OCFA, regardless of my emotional feelings that I have for our wonderful fire department that I would love to keep control of and have for the city of Fullerton, I think it's at the point where we do not have the capacity to take care of it in the way that we need to take care of it so that our citizens can be served in the way that our citizens deserve to be served. So I urge you tonight to go into a contract with OCFA and see what we can do to bring it up quickly within the 120 days that we just heard our city manager talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Next speaker is ZJ Hahn, and after that will be Eric Wayne.
I'd like to address the mayor pro tem, council member Zara, council member Silva, and council member Dunlop. Also our fantastic department heads here in Fullerton and our outstanding staff that work for the city of Fullerton. I'm ZJ Hahn. I'm familiar with I'm familiar with Fullerton when I relocated to the city in 1978. I don't envy you guys on any of these decisions because this comes down to dollars and cents. The city only has so much money in the coffers, and you have to balance a budget. As you know, the lowest form of collection for city taxes is property tax. We have a retail place that collects like Costco or a shopping mart, retail, you get tax dollars from that. And then if you sell automobiles at an AutoZone, you get much more money. And $16 million would go a long way in this city. So I don't envy the decision on how to make these tough decisions on the fire department. I'm all for this new equipment for $750,000. And in addition to that, I know that we have a number of streets that need repaving, and we have a budget for 1/3. So I'd love to have your new truck drive down the street, but if it gets taken up by the pothole like my vehicle today, because we don't have the money to pave the streets, it's just a balancing act on budget. And why we don't make decisions in this city to have a bigger tax base based on this beautiful open land gift we got, it's just beyond me. Go Titans, go Hornets.
Mr. Hahn, yes, sir. Are you aware that the city did not own that Kimberly-Clark property?
I am aware of that.
Okay. I just want you to know it wasn't our property to dispose of or to deal with or sell.
I'm also aware, Mr. Mayor, that project had to be approved by the city.
No, it's before my time, so I wouldn't be able to tell
well,
you
I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that we have city planners. I'd be happy to come and be an assistant city planner for this city and help us have some funds here to
We're hiring,
our
sir.
services.
Put in an application. Next comment, please.
Next speaker is Eric Wayne, followed by Joshua Ferguson.
Hello, City Council. Eric Wayne, 41-year resident. I have a table I put together here. I like to look at things numerically before making too much of a decision, and it contrasts pretty heavily with the suffering I was hearing about earlier. It looks like from 2019 to 2021, just in pay, not including benefits, not including any of that, just regular pay and overtime pay, Fullerton Fire Department workers got an average of 11.5% increase from 2019 to 2021. During that same time, we had a little lockdown crisis, and Parks lost 100 employees. They got multiple pay cuts. Public Works lost employees, multiple pay cuts. Management usually doesn't take pay cuts. They took pay cuts. They all took pay cuts. The two groups in the city that didn't have any of those were police and fire. And I didn't look up the police numbers, but I can see from fire it's 11% pay increase in 2 years. So I would disagree with the assertion that they're suffering. I would say I would much prefer to see the city retain control of the fire department. I'd much prefer local control to contracting things out. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Next speaker is Joshua Ferguson, followed by Tony Castro.
This is the most dishonest way to govern possible. 3 of you are endorsed by Fullerton Fire, and I find that to be telling of who actually is pushing for this. 2 years ago, the city of Fullerton agendized a new tax increase, Measure S. 2 of the council members here that are sort of pushing for this were behind that, and it failed. Taxpayers said no. And so we ended up cutting staff during, as the previous speaker mentioned, during the lockdowns and what have you. We don't have the money for this. I can't think anybody really believes that 3 sitting council members, a council majority that is endorsed by Fullerton Fire, wouldn't give them the money and benefits that they request if we had it. So the fact that we have this huge pay disparity behind OCFA tells me that you know, and several of you have been on council for multiple years, you know we don't have the money. So all this is a backdoor tax. You wouldn't go to the taxpayers again and ask them for money. You're just going to spend it and then say, oh, we have to cut services to everything. We don't have the money for your parks, for your roads, for all of these things, as typically always happens. You could have put a new tax on the ballot. You didn't. You could have budgeted for it. You could have spent the last year or so, what was March of 2021 when this first came up, seriously? You could have spent the last year and a half finding ways to budget for this, and you didn't. We don't have the money, and you want to spend it anyways. It is the most, if you believe in democracy, you can't defy the will of the voters and then turn around and just be like, whoops, we spent it anyways. Councilman Zara mentioned taxpayers a few minutes ago. This is an insult to them because if you didn't find the funding first, you're going to have to find it later, which is, again, a backdoor tax. It's insulting, and you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Next speaker is Tony Castro, followed by Curtis Gamble.
Mr. Castro, good evening.
Good evening. The Fullerton Fire Department are heroes. They were there to, when you have a fire, when you need medical emergency, you call 911 and they're going to send you the fire department. They have saved us over and over again. It's time for us to help the fire department in Fullerton and save them. If the Fullerton City Council cannot find funding mechanisms, then I can make some suggestions. I read in an article, Los Angeles Times, and I have not been able to verify this yet, so please do correct me if I'm wrong. But according to the Los Angeles Times, there is oil wells being pumped by the Brightburn Operating LP Corporation in Fullerton. And again, I was not able to confirm this yet. I just read an article in the LA Times. So I would propose maybe you guys think about implementing a local, citywide oil extraction fee, kind of like they have in Long Beach. For example, in Alaska, at the statewide level, they have a 25% oil extraction fee on crude oil that comes out of the ground. So if there is those oil wells, then maybe we can look at that. Windfall profits tax. We've been gouged at the pumps. We could maybe implement something at the local level, bring some money there. Is there slush funds for the city council members in the budget? I don't know. If there is, maybe we need to reduce that. Waste. We need to save the people, the department that has been there to save us over and over again. We can't give up on them because they never gave up on us. I want to help save the Fullerton Fire Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, Curtis Campbell, activist for the homeless and the veterans. I just like to say that I approve of this item on behalf of the fire department moving to Orange to the what is it? I can't even remember. To the changing the fire department. They should go to the OCFA, Orange County Firefighters Association. And the reason I say that is because I was a former OCTA bus driver for 14 years. We started out as OCTD, make a long story short. Then we moved to OC, Orange County Transit Authority. And there was, make it a long story short again, it was a reason. It had to do with working condition, funding, serving the community. So here we are with our own fire department that has to make the same decisions that we made at OCTA. And it worked out great. And I think it would work out great for the Fullerton Fire Department to get the funding that they need. But it's not only the funding, because when I was a bus driver, I used to call for service if someone got sick or hurt on my bus, and the fire department was there, no matter where I was in Orange County. This wasn't just about individual cities. It was anywhere in Orange County. There was some fire department there to assist. Another thing, too, I was homeless for 7 years at the Fullerton Transportation Center, always there. A lot of things happen at the Fullerton Transportation Center, good, bad. And whenever I call the fire department many times on behalf of the people, some of them was homeless, some of them was just regular residents, passengers getting off the bus. But the fire department was always there. And in 7 years, I never had a problem with them. They were always nice and polite, and that's the type of service that we need. Again, I share this part too. Military. I was on the USS Missouri battleship. We were the fire department. So that's how I became very familiar with the fire, fighting fires. I didn't like it at all, because I just wasn't tough enough, but we learn how to do all those things. So I give credit to the people who make that a part of their lives and their jobs, and they enjoy it. Again, I recommend always supporting the leader. For example, we supported the captain on our ship. If he said we needed it, we needed it. If the chief said we need it, we support him. We need it. If the community didn't want it, they would be here tonight saying, we don't want it. This room would be so full. So speaking on behalf of the community, because they're not here, let's do this thing. Thank you very much.
Next comment, please.
Next speaker is Shada Charles, followed by Michael Longe.
Make the mic a little shorter here. Hi. Sorry, short person. So I'm Dr. Shana Charles, and thank you to the council members who I've been able to speak with on this issue. I'm a resident and candidate, of course, for council for District 3, and I'd like to read, for transparency, the email that I sent to the council members that I wasn't able to speak to directly. I'm writing to urge you to support moving our main fire services to the OCFA, as our many years of underfunding and overworking our fire department has created a situation we are stuck with right now of broken trust. The relationship between our fire department and the city is tarnished beyond repair, and we must start anew. Yes, I understand that pensions and other obligations will total more than our current fire budget, and more than if we were to fully fund, according to that new report from consultants, which was very illuminating. But the move is the reality of what we need right now to have real fire safety. I really fear this. As someone who's a public servant myself, as a professor at a public university, and has been a union member for over 20 years, I know what I'd be doing if I were in their shoes. And I fear that if we stay in this current limbo, and if you reject this proposal and don't allow these contract negotiations to move forward, which, remember, it's a contract. It's not a future guarantee in perpetuity. It's going to have an endpoint and we can reevaluate. It's a contract. But I fear if we stay in this limbo we're in now, we'll erode our fire department even further, and we're going to find ourselves very soon in an even worse situation, potentially unable to maintain even minimal staffing. Because as a public employee myself, if I were sitting in their seats, I would be thinking, I would have already sent out a lot of resumes to every city around here. And I would be thinking very strongly of resigning or striking. And that's the reality of where we are. You have the choice of either moving forward with our negotiations and moving this fire department in a good direction. And what I'd like to do is increase the revenue base, absolutely, respecting the will of the voters, not through a sales tax on our residents, but increasing our revenue base in lots of other creative and pragmatic ways that we can do it, to over time be able to hopefully have our own fire department again and have that local control that we all want. But right now, we have to move to the OCFA, because if you reject this proposal, there will be real consequences. These are people with families and lives and careers, and I don't think they're going to stand for this abuse anymore. I really don't. And that's what I fear. So I hope that you will take that into consideration, that if you vote to reject this proposal, there will be real world consequences, and we will just be in more pain, and then we're going to be right back here later in a much worse situation. So thank you so much for your time, and I do want to thank all of you sitting on that dais, including Mr. Whitaker, who, please tell him I said this. I really want to thank you for your public service, because it really is important, and I thank you for your consideration of all these comments.
Thank you. Next comment.
Next is Michael Longe, followed by Dan Lancaster.